part-time since February. I haven't seen either one of them since February. They're waiting until a Saturday. I'll never go on Saturday. It's like, no, yay, I'll go. And they're well, it's like, you not only are you lying us obese, but you God, you again. It's like, see how real this one is.
And then I'll also try to
I don't mind the politics.
You know I'm right. That's why you can
Yes. Yes. You know, you can have issues of politics. People are the problem. You know, if it was just issues, straight up issues, and serious matters, then wouldn't matter. When you get somebody who says, okay, I'm going to stand up and vote for me because I need this check in the box so I can go to the you're going to be on
Oh, they're gonna sit at the. I think you want her. She wants to sit while she's speaking, correct? Yeah.
What happened?
Something with the table. This is pushed the wrong way.
You weren't there. It's not filling a void. There's no thank you.
As long as they don't slide. On the table, it's like Jerry Springer ratings. Watch your subscribership go up. Yeah.
There is such a thing as absolute truth and situation. It's hard to read. But my deathbed, stand here, my there is an absolute truth because you only know what the absolute background was. There is a
All right, everyone. If you can have a seat, we're gonna get started. Please. We're gonna get started.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining us today for our monthly meeting and CU Regent debate. I'm Kate Sneed, the House District 6A captain. Thank you. And I'm gonna turn it over to Karen to just say a few words, and then Andrew will go over rules, and we'll go ahead and get started.
So good afternoon, boys and girls, as I would say to my kindergartners.
Scott. Need more space.
We are asking for donations. I don't know if that's a surprise, but we use every penny that we get for voter outreach and get out the vote. None of us get paid anything, but we do have to pay the rent on this lovely establishment that we have right here. So if you would be so generous as to donate, if you put any cash in the envelopes, just please at least put your name, email, occupation, and employer. And that way we can report it correctly to our wonderful government. Thank you. Yeah, we're there.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Andrew Fisher. I'm the House District 6A co-captain. I'm going to briefly go over the rules, and then we're going to get started. I'm sorry that we are running a little late. We were having some issues with the live stream, but
Hey, I'm happy about that.
appear to have fixed it. Kate, is the camera at a weird angle?
Yeah, I'll turn it back to them once it's on you right now. So yeah.
Okay, got it. Okay, so we're going to start with opening statements. Opening statements are going to be 5 minutes each, and then we're going to jump into a series of questions that we, the House District 6 leadership, have prepared. Each candidate will receive 2 minutes to answer the question, except if one candidate mentions the other in his or her response, then we're going to give the other candidate a minute to respond. After that, we'll do closing statements for 5 minutes, after that, we'll take audience questions. So if you have a question that we haven't asked from our prepared questions, please feel free to text it to me at the phone number on the board. For those of you on the live stream, it's 315-240-6577. We're going to put that in the comments of the live stream as well. And if we have time remaining after our prepared questions, then we'll ask a few audience questions before closing statements, and then we will wrap up. Before we get started, we're going to do a quick coin flip to determine who is going to start with opening statements and who gets the first stab at each question, as well as who's going to start with closing arguments. So, Johnny, what is your preference?
I'll take heads.
It
Tails.
is tails. Would you like to go first or second?
I'll go second.
Okay. Perfect. And with that, Johnny, you have 5 minutes for an opening statement.
Sweet. Should I stand or speak into the mic sitting?
So the mic is for the benefit.
Don't touch it, please. Please don't
Okay,
touch
well,
it.
it's just, carry on.
The mic is for the benefit of the folks on the live stream. I think it should be loud enough. Could you just speak?
Okay. Can I stand or?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here today. My name is Johnny Nguyen, for those I haven't met yet, and I'm running for CU Regent in the 1st Congressional District. For those who aren't fully familiar with what CU Regents do, they are the Board of Directors for the University of Colorado, and they are constitutionally charged to oversee the general operations and the general budget of CU. This is a really important role, and uniquely in Colorado, we have the opportunity to elect them. We've been doing this since the 1800s, and it's a piece of democracy that's very important in Colorado. What's unique about this is you have the opportunity to elect people on the Board of Regents who you would not traditionally see serving on the board of a higher education institution. Something I've shared a lot in the campaign is that if I'm elected, I'd be the first openly gay CU Regent. I'd be Colorado's first Vietnamese elected official. I'd be the only Democrat on the board that's a practicing attorney, and I'd provide a very modern student voice on the CU campuses. I'm running, when people ask me why I'm running and what I care about most, I talk about access to education. And I'm very particular about the word access because a lot of folks at the CU President's office right now will actually say that CU is affordable. And I'm of a different opinion where I think affordability looks very different for every single person depending on their background. My campaign is about access to education because I was raised as a first-generation student. My parents were immigrants from Vietnam after the Vietnam War, and they've always reminded me of the privileges I had by being born in the United States and having access to a free education here in Denver. I was the first in my family to graduate high school, college, and law school, and I owe that to the resilience of my parents, as well as the amazing resources I was provided at CU. Now I'm a practicing attorney, and I have the privilege to give back to the community that's given me so much. And it's all I want to do, and it's why I want to run for CU Regent. For this race, I've shared this a lot of the campaign, is that I've been deeply committed to CU for almost a decade now. I have studied for CU, I have taught for CU, I have researched for CU, I have worked for CU, I have led for CU, I have lobbied for CU, and now I'm running for CU. This is a community that has meant the entire world to me. It's my second home, and I'd look forward to an opportunity to serve in this role and give back. So with that, I look forward to getting to know you more, answering the questions, and having this dialogue. Thanks so much.
Well, excuse me. Hello, CD6. My name is Wanda James, and I am also a candidate for CU Regent from CD1. Thank you all for coming out today on your Saturday. Happy Easter, Passover, and Ramadan, or enjoying a great Saturday. Experience. What does experience mean, and especially with this board? $5.3 billion what this board oversees, the third largest employer in the state of Colorado, 4 campuses, and a research hospital. Experience is something that this board is going to need. I graduated from University of Colorado. I was the first in my family to graduate. I'm also the first African American woman commissioned through the Naval ROTC unit at CU, which means I am a former naval officer, naval intelligence. I was an IUSS officer, a sub-hunter. If you ever saw Hunt for Red October, then you know what it was that we did. After the military, I went into corporate America, where I served as an executive. I was headhunted for 2 Fortune 100 companies. Leaving corporate America, I met this amazing man right here who allowed us to become entrepreneurs. And for the last 25 years together, my husband and I have been running small businesses. On top of that, I have also sat on some very influential boards. I am a Junior League Board Fellow. What's the Junior League? For those of you that don't know, the Junior League was started by Eleanor Roosevelt for an opportunity for young women to be able to give back to their communities and learn the power of volunteering. And the Junior League is huge throughout the United States. Their board fellows are chosen and then go through an extensive program to be on boards. I've sat on the Starlight Children's Foundation, as well as the Los Angeles Small Business Commission, as well as the CU Alumni Board and the CU Black Alumni Board. Currently, I sit on the Colorado Tourism Board, which I was appointed to by Governor Jared Polis. That board oversees how we market Colorado to the entire world. When you look at what experience does and why experience matters, not only have I met budgets, made budgets, I hire and fire C-suites all the time, CFOs, COOs, because myself, I'm the CEO of a corporation. This is why this board matters and why experience matters, because this is the first time in 42 years that the Democrats have had control of the CU Board of Regents. It has been since Jimmy Carter, since Democrats have had control of the Board of Regents. It's been since 1984 since a black woman has sat on the Board of Regents. The very first black woman to sit on the Board of Regents was Rachel Noel. She was appointed to the Board of Regents by Governor Dick Lamb, and then won re-election in 1976, and not only became the first woman of color, but the first woman on the Board of Regents. She was also the chair of the Board of Regents. So I look forward to following in her footsteps 38 years later. So we talk about diversity, and diversity is important. Because right now on that board, we are talking about things like, what is the president going to look like? What are the students of color going to be able to grow in that position? Sadly, black students have not increased at any of the CU campuses since I was there in 1981 when I matriculated. So when we talk about diversity, it's not just diversity of staff, of students, but of staff, of faculty, and administration. And that all begins with a board of directors. And that's what I'm bringing to this board. Experience, competency, diversity. That's what we're looking at. I look forward to being on this board because CU was like a warm blanket to me. All of the things that I've had the opportunity to be first at in my life all started at the University of Colorado. It is a place that my husband has heard me talk about for years, that I have talked about for years, and I could not be more proud than to be a graduate of the University of Colorado Boulder, one of the few black graduates of the University of Colorado Boulder. So I am asking for your vote as we all move forward. I am looking forward to showing why experience matters on this board and why this board requires experience, especially since this is the first time that we're going to get the chance to bring our democratic values to the entire CU system. So thank you all very much, and I look forward to today.
All right. First question is, the CU Board of Regents is constitutionally charged with the general supervision of the university and has exclusive control and direction of all funds and appropriations to the university unless otherwise provided by law. That is a pretty broad mission statement, general supervision of the university. What do you think the role of a CU regent is? Is it, for example, to simply vote on matters presented by the administration? Is it to take a more active role than that? And if so, what does that active role look like?
Sure.
You're first.
Awesome. Sure. So, Andrew, you're spot on with that, and that's why I love my introduction to explain what the regents do. It's really important that we understand this role. Yes, the regents do vote on the budget often, but when you look at it from an administrative perspective, it's often the CU's office that sets up the budget, and then they give it to the regents to give the kind of the rubber stamp on it. When I talk to the regents, they said that they've actually put in a bigger effort to actually redline and veto the budget to see what they're actually voting on. And I think that's a really important thing because we always talk about where the money at CU is going, and the regents need to do better about really taking a deeper dive into what they're voting on. And so that's something I would promise as regent to really pay attention to the budget, what we're voting on, what's given to us rather than just giving the rubber stamp on it. As for another role for the regents, I think it's important that we're also embedded in the community. This is something that I thought was a big problem when I was a student at CU. And some of the regents were great when they were visiting the student governments that I served on, but in 2018, I put my name forward to sit on the search committee for the presidential search when we were looking for Mark Kennedy. And when I submitted my name to fill in that student role, I had the support of all 4 student body presidents of all the 4 CU campuses. But I wasn't picked to be on the student search committee because Republican Heidi Goodall was serving on this board, and she knew how outspoken I was. Heidi Goodall is one of the front runners right now for the Colorado Republican Party in their gubernatorial election. I wasn't picked for this seat, and that was okay. I didn't feel entitled to it, but I was really disheartened to figure out that a staff member was serving on the seat who happened to be taking college credits. And when that happened, a lot of the regents kind of took a step back and let the community talk about it, but they weren't very present, and that was a big cause of frustration. If you Google my name with Johnny Wynn with Mark Kennedy, you'll see me on the ground protesting. You'll see me asking and demanding for more transparency with our CU Board of Regents. And to answer the question about the role, CU Regents need to be more in our community, need to be more on our campuses, and actually understand and talk to the students, faculty, and staff about the concerns.
Yes, please.
Thanks.
So, yes, we are definitely there to supervise the university and to vote and to look at what the budgets look like and to be able to make recommendations on different aspects of the budget that we look at. However, one of the things that I think is about leadership is about leading. And when we talk about leadership, what does that mean? That means being able to put, forth an active place to be able to change things that we don't think are correct. One of the things that I did on the Colorado Board of Tourism is up until 3 years ago, if you looked at how Colorado marketed itself to the world, it was mostly all white. White people skiing, white people rock climbing, white people in boats. My very first day on that board, when they showed us the advertising that was going to be going out for Colorado from the entire world, I says, we're not showing any diversity here in Colorado. I happen to know that the wounded warriors come here to Colorado to be able to train. We train a lot of the folks who have lost legs, lost limbs, have gone through PTSD. We train them to do all these amazing things here in Colorado. None of that was reflected. We didn't have any black or brown people being expressed on how we show Colorado to the world when clearly there are black and brown people here. Now when you look at how Colorado is marketed to the world, you will see a whole host of diversity. You will see people of color, you will see age, you will see different abilities, all reflected through how we market Colorado to the world. And that was directly because when I sat on that board, I still sit on the board, but when I sat on that board, I says, wait a minute, we're missing something here. And the rest of the board didn't see it because they didn't look through a lens of diversity. I look at things through a lens of diversity when I see them. I bring in community members. I work hard with the NAACP here in Denver. I work with the Young Urban League. I work with communities of color. I work with the military, VFW, to be able to make sure that all of those voices are represented when we're talking about what we need to bring to the university system. So this is what I do with an active role from all of the boards that I have sat on. There is not one place that I have not brought a voice and change, and I'm very, very proud of being able to do that. Thank you.
Johnny, in your answer to the last question, you touched on the CU presidential search, the most recent one, I suppose. If elected CU regent and in the position of selecting a new president for the CU system, what would your top 3 priorities be in finding candidates? How would you work to ensure those priorities are met while being a new member on the board?
Sure. I think first and foremost is diversity, because as Wanda explained, you need to see diversity at the top for it to really resemble, and especially for a lot of the first-gen diverse students on our campuses, when they're looking up at who's running the university, they need to see that they have a place on this campus, that they're represented, and they're being thought about when they're considering policies for the university for all of us. So the first thing I'll look at is diversity. That's a really important thing that I'm happy to talk about too with the recent presidential search selection. Second thing is I would look at how embedded they've actually been with the University of Colorado. In my conversations with students, faculty, and staff, and other people who've really worked at CU, just a shout out to Travis Leica, who's running for city council. He's been working at CU for almost a decade, right? I think it's really important that you are actually embedded and you've been a part of the CU system to understand how it really works and the intricate problems that are there on campus. So I would look at the presidential search because at the candidates, if they've actually been in higher education, if they've actually been working with CU, they actually understand how the system truly works and the intricacies there. And then third, I would look at, what track record they have with collaboration. I think with CU, it's the Board of Regents historically, even though it has been a Republican majority for so many years, there's even a lack of collaboration on their side. We've had, in a Republican majority times that we've had on the Board of Regents, we've had multiple Democrats who were chairs because the Republicans couldn't even get along with each other to vote on a Republican chair. And collaboration was something that's been lacking on the CU Board of Regents for decades, and I think that became very apparent. And so I would look for a president who is willing to collaborate and work, and not just work on the other side of the aisle, but also to bring in all voices for a collective effort in the best interest of CU. I'm running as a very progressive candidate, and I recognize that this is the first time we've had the Democratic majority in almost 40 years. But I'm more than happy to work with those on the other side to bring them over onto the right side of history and to push our values across the board. So, yeah.
Thank you for that question, and especially since we're immersed right now in the middle of we're at the end of the presidential search. The one place that I will differ from what Johnny just said was the idea that we are only going to look within the CU system to be able to find a leader to be able to lead CU will lead to being no diversity. Only because the CU system does not that diverse of a system. So one of the things that I would like to look at, should we look for another president during my 6 years tenure as a Board of Regent, would be how are we looking for a president? Where are we looking for this new president? Are we going to women's organizations, communities of color? Are we looking at universities that have had a diverse student body, and definitively a more diverse student body than what we have seen here at CU? I have been speaking to, and I don't want to mention names right now until we're at a position to be able to protect folks, but in speaking to a lot of the administration and staff of color, and especially women of color on numerous campuses throughout the CU system, they are not happy with the fact that their voices are not being heard. They feel like they are being left out of major decisions. And a lot of that is happening from, once again, from the top down. So in looking for a president, I would like to see a president that has overseen a university system that is diverse, overseen a university system that does reach back out to the alumni so that the alumni feel involved and connected to the university. That has been a problem on the CU campus since I sat on the alumni board and the Black alumni board, is CU does not have the same type of connection to its alumni that other universities have. So we need to figure out why that is happening and where that breakdown is from leadership in administration all the way through the CU system. So those are the things that I would like to be looking at for a CU president, is to see how they can congeal 4 campuses and a research hospital to be able to make all of that happen. So we can't just look within the system, we have to be able to look throughout the system. The other thing that would be the most important to me would be diversity, and a diverse aspect of where this system is going. If you look at all of the websites, the president's website, the regent's website, diversity, diversity, diversity is what we talk about, yet we don't seem to have diversity. It seems like we're all doing a real good game of talking about it, but not actually bringing it. So it is important that that would be happening. Thirdly, the ability to lead. The ability to lead. to be involved and to lead. And I would like to see university presidents' track record on leadership. And because of a university of this scope, a $5.3 billion budget, man, I'm going to want to see somebody that can absolutely dive into those numbers, know what those numbers mean, and ensure that this system is receiving the best that it can.
Johnny, Wanda mentioned you by name. Would you like a 1-minute response or the next question?
I'll just respond on one thing about looking outside the university for a president. On that point is that when you look at Mark Kennedy, who was president of CU, he actually did represent a very diverse university, the University of North Dakota, that had a large indigenous student population. But I don't think he actually knew or understood diversity that well. And you saw this when he would have these conferences where he said he understood black students just because he grew up with curly hair. So he led a diverse university, but he didn't know how to lead diversity. This is a big problem where there is certainly talent outside of our university that we should explore and look at. I don't want to close that off. But I think it's very important that you understand the CU system, understand what the students of color are facing specifically at CU on our campuses for racism, and have a president that understands that to lead there. So.
All right, both of the candidates talked about the Democrats having a majority on the CU Board of Regents for the first time in decades. To what extent do you view seeking consensus with the Republican members of the board as important? Should Democrats be trying to bring Republicans along, perhaps compromising here and there along the way where possible, or should Democrats take the majority and run?
Is that me or?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's a fair question. First of all, it's a really unique opportunity for Democrats. I don't want to say take it and run, but to really push the policies that we've been wanting to do for decades that we haven't been able to do. One of the first things I think I'm going to do and lead on is to utilize the legal authority that was granted to us last year by Senate Bill 21-256, which was to allow the CU Regents the legal authority to push more policies on gun control on our campuses. This is something that I think the Regents should look at to take action on gun control, and you can see me at the forefront working to ban concealed carry on our campuses. This is something that I don't think the Republicans are going to be super all about, but I think it's something that the Regents have this opportunity. We should take the most hold of it. Something that HD6 candidate Elizabeth Epps talked about at one of she talked about this during one of her forums that really inspired me was that yes, we will work with the Republicans. Why would we not work with people on the same board? Especially with the boards I've served on, I was very happy to work with people who had differing opinions. But it's also working with them to get them on the right side of history, because we could talk about bipartisanship as much as we want, and it's a pretty thing, but we also can't compromise our values and all the damage that the Republicans have done for the last 40 years on the Board of Regents. So yes, I'll work collaboratively, but it's time that we really push our progressive values across the board and really make a difference at CU. So.
Yo, I'm a lifelong Democrat. I make no qualms about the fact that it is time for Democratic policies to move to the forefront. And for a university system to be able to bring in the liberal values of how we teach, what we teach, being able to make sure that we are opening our doors and making people feel at home and comfortable, all types of people, requires, I believe, a Democratic voice. That being said, I do believe that, of course, we work with people. So one of the other things that I am most proud of in my life is my husband and I are the first African Americans legally licensed in America to own a dispensary. We have been at the forefront of ending the war on drugs. My brother was arrested at age 17 with about $160 worth of street drugs, or street cannabis. He did 10 years in a prison system. 4 of those years, my brother picked cotton in Texas. My black brother picked cotton in Texas, which is why my husband and I are, to purchase his freedom, which is why my husband and I fight so hard to end this racist drug war. In ending this drug war, 13 years ago in Colorado, we lit a spark that is now nationwide. I have worked with legislative bodies across the United States, both Republican and Democrat, to bring an end to this drug war. We now have Republicans standing up to end the drug war and fight with us because we were able to show them the democratic value of the fact that we should not be locking up people for simple possession and for the use of cannabis. So when we can start to change, and when we started 13 years ago, less than 40% of Americans wanted to see full-on legalization legalization. Today, it's 70% of Americans want to see legalization. That was because we were able to reach across the aisle, show common sense legislation, and show what it was that the people wanted to see. And this is something that we need to see at the university level, because at the university level is when we are bringing young minds and student minds and research minds to be able to take a look at what changes the world, and taking those people, giving them the educational basis to go forward and make decisions and help change the world. So yes, we absolutely want to see those democratic values pushed forward, and I look forward to being able to do exactly that.
Next question is, what is one thing that the CU Board of Regents has done in the past 2 years that you disagree with? How would you have done it differently?
In the last 2 years?
Well,
Yeah.
you can expand the timeline if
Yeah.
helpful.
Well, honestly, the big thing was how the process of how they hired Mark Kennedy as their president. This was really frustrating for me, as I shared, for many reasons. And I think the CU community really felt a big burn. It was a big, the Regents don't really, here's the reality, the Regents don't really make the news that much, other than like the Daily Camera up in Boulder, and no one really pays attention to the Regents until something like this happens with Mark Kennedy. And you know, CU has had a great reputation in our state as our flagship university, but then when you had a very progressive campus hire this very conservative Republican congressman to lead our university and to sign our degrees that students are graduating with, it leaves a stain on our campus. And when he was discharged, he took $2 million with him. You know, like it's terrible, and it's a big stain of distrust that we have now at CU that we have to live with and we have to move on for. That's something I would look at differently. I'm very proud of what the Regents have done this time around. They have been more transparent, and they have changed what the search committee looks like. There are more students on the search committee. There are more diverse people on the search committee. I'm very proud of that. But as for what I would change more is, you know, I would look at how we should be more public and transparent about who is putting their name forth in the search committee. Last year, the Regents, or I should say the Regents, but CU pushed to amend the Colorado Open Records Act so that they wouldn't have to disclose the names of the people who are going through with it. I personally disagree with this, because I think if you're putting your name out there, just like if you were running for office, that you should be very proud to stick your name out and to stick your head out there, because you should be open to facing public scrutiny so that we could really figure out who should really lead in these public offices. I don't agree with how CU moved to change Cora. I think we need full transparency, because our voters and our people, our taxpayers, we deserve that as a part of the community. So that's what I would change.
Wow, things that we disagree with that has happened on the Board of Regents in the last 2 years or a little bit longer. I mean, of course, when we talk about Mark Kennedy, that is obviously an issue, and how the presidential search looks forward to things. But one of the things that I have an issue with CU, and it's an ongoing issue right now, is we keep talking about diversity. There's a $25 million pot of money that has been put into the university campus to be able to diversify. Except for that money, if you look at the strategic plan, every pillar of that plan has a name and an office attached to it, except for 2 areas: diversity, inclusion, and mental health. One thing that I do know from experience and having run numerous companies and have sat on numerous boards, if there is not a name attached to something, then that means that it is not important and that it is not going to happen. And so in looking at that strategic plan, which is, it's a pretty amazing strategic plan, very well put together, I was just really struck by the fact that there are not names on those 2 aspects. And in my estimation, I mean, there's a lot of important pieces to that plan, but diversity and mental health tend to be 2 of the biggest issues. I've had conversations with all of the chancellors at the University of Colorado system and with the president's office. And every single one of them have told me that their biggest issue on campus, my question to them was, what keeps you up at night? Every single one of them told me mental health on campus, from staff and faculty all the way through the student body. If every one of them are telling me that that is what keeps them up at night, then why is there not a name attached to that strategic plan as to how we're going to address it? Secondly, like I said, at the top of everybody's website, diversity, 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 diversity. Everybody is talking diversity. If there is not a name attached to that diversity or an office attached to that, then where is the accountability going to come from? So it's those types of things that I, draw issue with, that I would like to make sure are happening on that campus, or on the whole CU camp, or all 4 campuses. And those would be some of the biggest pieces that I would like to see happen. And of course, when we start talking about transparency for the presidential search, there are so many different issues with people who aren't going to get the job to be able to put their name forward. That's an interesting concept to speak about. I don't know that I necessarily have issue with the way that they have done it. I have issue with the way they marketed it to folks. Instead of coming out at the end that this is the person we're putting forth, we should have done numerous marketing stops all the way every time they came into a different place to inform the public of what it is that they were doing, and the opportunity to speak to the public.
All right, the Board of Regents recently approved cost increases for incoming students starting in fall 2022, which include a 4.3% tuition increase for Colorado residents, a 3% increase on room and board, a 2.6% increase on student activity fees. Would you have voted for these increases, yes or no, and why? And more generally, what is your view on tuition policy?
Sure. So this is a difficult question to answer because, to be honest, it's very easy for either of us to campaign on, no, we don't want to increase tuition. No, we don't want to, we should be cutting tuition. We should make it tuition free. And if I had a magic wand, then yeah, obviously. But the real truth is that in Colorado, we are chokeholded with Tabor. We need to find tuition money somewhere, and it's unfortunate that we have these increases. I don't like that we are increasing it, but it's just, we had the increase. So would I have voted on it? Pragmatically, yes, I would have. The same way I would vote to increase taxes in Colorado so we could fund for our other programs. It's unfortunate, but it's the reality. I think it's really important that we also look at other policies to make CU more accessible as it relates to tuition. So something that CU Boulder has done is they've implemented CU tuition caps. So when you're enrolled at CU, you know what your tuition is going to look like for the next 4 years. This actually isn't implemented at CU Denver, which is something that I would look forward to pushing forward as a regent. Students right now at CU Denver, their tuition could fluctuate out of control of the regent. It hasn't happened much yet, but if it were to spike up, so many students would be shocked, and they would be very displaced in where their educational planning is. Other things I would do that wouldn't directly affect tuition, but it would affect debt in general for students, is I would require that all CU Denver students have health insurance, whether that be provided by CU or through a private insurer. This is a requirement that's currently available at CU Boulder and the CU Anschutz Medical Campus, but it's not at CU Denver. There are students at CU Denver right now who are not insured, and CU doesn't provide them a health insurance plan. This is a big problem because if someone, a Denver student gets sick, they could rack up thousands of dollars of medical bills on top of the $1,000 of tuition debt. And to be honest, it's hard for a student to continue their education when they don't even know if it's going to give them a return in the long run. And that's not the message that I want for CU, and that's something I would support. So yeah.
Yeah, free school for everybody. We're not raising anything anymore. Okay, that's it. No, not really.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. It's hard to be able to say, what those increases will be since we weren't sitting in those conversations happening. But yes, there are going to, be increases as we go through. And, Tabor here in Colorado, Taxpayer Bill of Rights, if you're a Democrat, you've all campaigned against that policy, which definitely puts a stronghold or a tight hold on where we can be. I believe Colorado ranks 48th in higher ed spending, which is dismal. There is an issue in Colorado which we call the education paradox, which is we are one of the, I think, the second most highly educated state, but we're bringing in those educated people instead of educating our students as they come up through the university system. One of the greatest conversations that I had with Todd Solisman, the interim president and potentially the new president of CU, He came out of policy and budgets, and he walked me through that website. There is so many different pots of money available to Colorado students to be able to take advantage of the University of Colorado system, from research to tuition, K through 12, from students being able to get into CU and to be able to make it amazingly affordable, especially for low-income students. Many of those pots go untouched and not, drained is not the word, but not, the money is not taken. And it's because, once again, I keep coming back that CU has a marketing problem. In other words, we do not have people out in the communities talking to the folks to be able to make sure that they know that their students can afford a University of Colorado education on any of our campuses. That money is there. We are just not marketing it well to those communities. So one of the things that I would like to see at Regent is the opportunity to have some type of ongoing dialogue with communities of color and underserved communities to ensure that that people understand that, yes, your student, your child can get into CU and we can make it affordable. Because being the flagship of this state, to be, man, this school that is given, I mean, even when I was going for jobs in Los Angeles and New York, people were impressed that I was a CU graduate. It carries weight, you know, so to be able to make sure that our students in Colorado are able to get that education and to afford that education should be something that the Regents definitely make happen in speaking to all the different communities to be able to show the affordability of the system.
All right, we're going to work in our first audience question. Both candidates have discussed the importance of diversity. As seen in the ongoing high-profile Harvard lawsuit, there's a growing effort from the right to attack affirmative action programs as benefiting Black and brown students at the expense of Asian Americans. How do you view this debate, and how would you navigate concerns from both groups?
Yeah. So before I answer this, I think it's dope that Juan and I are running because you have you have a Black woman and you have an Asian gay man running. Like, and if I was sitting in the audience as a student, I'd be pissed to see like two non-diverse people try to answer this question. So I'm glad that this is the setup we have. You know, Asian Americans throughout history have not participated enough in elections. This is something I've learned about and have worked on ever since I was a freshman at CU. I was a scholar for the White House Initiative on Asian American Pacific Islanders, which was reinitiated by President Barack Obama to encourage increased voters and also increased reputation of Asian Americans in politics and government. And I wouldn't be where I'm at today but for this program. But that being said, something we talked about in these conversations is where do Asian Americans have to speak about in these topics and conversations of race? Because yes, Asian Americans have dealt with severe racism, especially recently with the rise of xenophobia during COVID-19. But I also recognize the privileges that Asian Americans did have, where we rode the backs of Black and brown people during the Civil Rights Movement, and we weren't there, to be honest. We weren't. And we've benefited from the Civil Rights Act, and we've benefited from a lot of that. And so when we talk about affirmative action, there's a lot of things to talk about, and there's not a black and white answer about it. You look at Asian Americans generally as a whole as a big demographic. Something I would push and support for is desegregating that data, because there's a lot of actually like Mongolian, Hmong, Vietnamese groups who actually have a lower graduation rate than blacks, but they're grouped in with the rest of the Asians who have a higher graduation and employment rate sometimes than whites. And so it's hard to have this topic of conversation when we actually don't even have all the right data. So that's something that we need to look more into. As for affirmative action generally, like I support it. I really do, because we always talk all this game about recruiting more diverse students and also retaining them, but then we don't actually do anything to really rip the band-aid and just do it. And I think that's what affirmative action has been able to do, and so I fully support it, even as an Asian American who may be hurt by it. And that's where I stand on it.
It is dope that Johnny and I are both running.
We're good friends. I don't know if y'all know this.
I know.
Yeah.
We actually really do like each other, which is really awesome. And it's also a testament to CU that these two people are graduates of the CU system, because this is what we want to see happen. So, back at you. Black people have taken the brunt of everything in the United States. There's a wealth gap issue. There is a education issue. There is a home ownership issue. There is a job issue. There is a safety issue. As a Black woman running for office, I have received more death threats than I care to think about at this moment. There is not a Black woman elected official right now that has not received death threats. Elizabeth? Daily. So when we talk about diversity, when we talk about ending the wealth gap, when we talk about ending the education gap, when we talk about creating more jobs and opportunities, when Black people are lifted, it lifts all boats. Clearly, 100%, every data point shows that. The civil rights movement was built between Black and brown Americans to be able to change what has happened in this country, which is why diversity on this CU Regent Board is so amazingly important. When I look at where, and I'm having the administration pull for me right now, the number of Black students that were on campus in 1981 when I matriculated, there are less Black students at CU Boulder now. There are less students, Black students at CU Denver, and there are less Black students at UCCS. We have done a good job on the Denver campus and at Anschutz from becoming a Hispanic serving institution, which we are very proud of. And once again, my question then becomes, what did we do and how did we make that happen? And how do we replicate that to make that happen, to be able to bring more and more diversity to all of the campuses that we're looking at? As far as this Blacks versus Asians versus Latinos, that's made up. That is not something that becomes an issue when we talk about diversity. Because once again, if we are raising the bar for what we're bringing for Black students on any of the campuses, we are raising the bar for everybody. And that's not just race, right? It's for gender diversity. It's for a sexual orientation. It is for the ability for students with different disabilities to be able to feel confident and to be able to move around campus. So once again, when you look at things through a diversity lens, that lens becomes so much different than just race. However, once again, being a Black woman, when I walk into a room, diversity is coming with me. So that's what that looks like.
Another audience question. If the current Board of Regents select Todd Salomon as CU's new president between now and you taking office, would you be satisfied with that selection? Or when you receive the opportunity, would you advocate another presidential search?
Satisfied is it's difficult because I'm never satisfied, to be honest. Todd Salomon is a great guy. I think he was a very effective legislator. I don't know anybody in this entire state who understands CU's budget actually better than Todd Salomon. In my conversations with him, he got a good head on his shoulders. I really like Todd. I really do. Why I'm not satisfied is that, again, with the presidential search, CU talks up diversity and inclusion. And here we are not selecting a diverse president. Not that I think, we should just have a president just because they're diverse. No, that's not what I believe. I just wish that we had a bigger pool and we got to know who these other people were so that the public could be more informed about who else was in the search committee, who else was diverse and also qualified to look at. There was a big piece of controversy 2-3 weeks ago with Joe Garcia, our former lieutenant governor, not being selected as the top 5. And he has an impressive background in education in general, really. But it was hard for either of us to really comment because we didn't even know who was part of the final 5 to say whether or not a Latino man should have been on this consideration. We don't know. And that's my big problem that I've had with the presidential search with Mark Kennedy and also the it is better now. I don't want to discount the Regents, but we still have that problem. And I'm just here for transparency so we fully understand the full picture. So to answer this question, I'm very happy we have Todd Salem. He's going to be a great president. I'd be honored to work with him. He doesn't raise any red flags for me to want to redo a whole nother presidential search. He really doesn't. And I really respect and look up to him, and I hope I could learn so much from him. But I hope that one day, and I dream that we will have either a woman or a person of color on this board as president of CU.
I like Todd. I like him a lot. I do. And as Johnny mentioned, there probably is nobody in Colorado that understands the budget more than Todd did. Interestingly, though, when we looked, and the Regents did put out that there was a diverse group of folks as they came down, and they didn't give the names, but they gave the backgrounds of the people that they were looking at. I would not suggest another run for another look at a different president as we move forward with Todd. However, the one thing, though, that I understand about this is that the Board of Regents are Todd's boss. Todd works for the board, well, he works for the university, but the Regents are effectively his, who he reports to. So when I look at the strategic plan and I look at the auditor's report for CU, and I look at how CU is spending money and what CU says is important, I look forward to holding Todd's feet to the fire on all of those things. And so when I look at that strategic plan, I want to know from Todd right away, whose name are we putting in for diversity? Whose name are we putting in for mental health? How are we going to make this happen? So while I think that Todd has some amazing strengths where he's coming from, I want to be able to sit down and talk to him about how are we going to ensure that this strategic plan is met. And that $25 million that we just put in for diversity is a temporary budget. So that means that there is no ongoing budget for diversity. So $25 million, I mean, it sounds like a lot to all of us sitting in the room because I don't have $25 million, but that's, in business terms and in a $5.3 billion budget term, we're going to burn through that budget very quickly. What happens next year and the year after that? Who is funding this program? So did we put this up here for an election year so we can go, oh yeah, $25 million, and then all of a sudden just forget it? And because there's not a name on those two areas, it makes me believe that that's exactly where this university is heading. So I look forward to working with Todd, and I look forward to holding Todd's feet to the fire to ensure that those things that we say we're going to do, we are going to get done.
All right, we're going to do 2 more questions and then closing arguments. Second to last question.
He's a lawyer.
Sorry.
Closing arguments.
Second to last question. Both of you, both in the question about tuition and in other questions, have addressed the state of the CU budget. CU currently receives between 6 and 8% of its budget from the state of Colorado. Please share your perspectives as to how we can boost funding from the state.
Sure. So in my campaign, initially when we started a campaign, you seek endorsements and you seek support from other elected leaders across the state. My campaign has been endorsed by State Treasurer Dave Young, and as of this morning, I got endorsed by State Senator Chris Hansen and Dominic Moreno, who also sit on the Joint Budget Committee. And I've had conversations with them, and they really grilled me about, with the amount of lack of state funding that the state gives Colorado, which I actually was under the impression of 3 to 4%.
Yeah,
actually
4%,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like, how do you feel about that trend? How do you feel about Governor Polis, even with the amount of, or the lack of amount of money he has given or provided to higher education? I think it's a very dangerous trend that we are often slashing budgets from higher education just because it's the biggest pie. And in my conversations with those who've endorsed me and also the electorate on this question is that I don't like this trend that we're cutting the budget. I don't like that CU is always the punching bag when we need to fund something else. It's not a good trend, and it's made CU have to become very creative and get on their survival feet to help fund the university. As for how we advocate more for state funding, something I've talked about on this campaign is creating partnerships with the State Board of Education. In my conversations with those on the state board, and also those in the public schools, there actually hasn't been much collaboration with those boards with the University of Colorado Board of Regents. And that means that we're not being as united on the front about as a strong voice for education funding in Colorado if those elected in these seats aren't even working together as closely to push for this. So I talk about those partnerships created there so that we go lobby our state to give us more money and also see us a big priority and not cut us anymore. And I wouldn't even stop at the state, really. You know, something that CU is doing right now in their Office of Government Affairs is they're actually even lobbying Congress to increase our Pell Grants. So because we need to look outside of our state too. As we address, we're 48th in the nation. We need to look at outside resources as well. And so I'd also push Congress to give us more money and also explore forgiving student loan debt. So, yeah.
Yeah, Tabor, and more Tabor. You know, conversations with the legislative folks. Leslie Herod is chair of the Joint Budget Committee, who is somebody that I've worked with very closely, and we've had conversations as to how we end up bringing, you know, more money to higher ed. Angie Piccioni, who is the director of higher ed on the governor's cabinet, is also an endorser of our campaign and a dear friend. And we meet on Sundays to talk about higher ed and the things that we can do to be able to make. It's not just about increasing the budget for higher ed and for education, but what are the tentacles that budget would increase, and where can we find money to be able to do things with. And yeah, it would be fantastic to see Tabor repealed and to be able to do more with higher education, because a country such as America, without education, what are we thinking about? Unfortunately, and if you talk to any of the regents, past or present, the idea that the state is going to put more money into higher ed, I mean, it's a nice conversation, and I can make you all feel good, and I can tell you all the things that, you know, are going to make the voters get happy about it. But in realistic terms, until we get a different makeup of our state legislature, Tabor is going to be something that controls exactly how much money is going to be put into the higher ed budget. Clearly, I have a close relationship with the current governor of Colorado, Governor Jared Polis, and we've had this conversation as well. So in looking at those types of things as a regent, because of my relationships with the legislative office, with the governor's office, I would love to be able to bring any ideas that the Board of Regents has to be able to increase different areas where money infusion can help change parts of what we're looking at for higher ed. But the idea that the state of Colorado is going to be able to magically change how much money is going into higher ed because myself or Johnny gets elected, unfortunately, is probably just not something that we're going to see happening. That being said, workforce development, bringing on different, you know, opportunities for different parts of Colorado to help fund different areas with the university system, I think is definitely something important. Down with the chancellor at UCCS, he would really like to see more and more corporations being able to help with his students that are down in at UCCS in the conversations, you know, with him as well too. So I think that there are a lot of ideas out there on things that we can do. One of the things that I think that the regents can do is to be able to corral some of those ideas, once again, creatively, and put them in front of the legislative body to see if this is something that we can actually make happen. Because clearly, a state like Colorado should not be 48th in its higher education spending, clearly.
All right, the last question is, what is the CU system's biggest opportunity? If elected to the CU Board of Regents, would you have authority to act on that, and how would you do it?
Sure. So as I shared before, I don't want to beat the horse again, you know, but I'd be a big advocate to push for gun control on our campuses. This has been a very hot button topic across all United States, as you've seen in Ohio, where a student was walking around with a a semi-automatic rifle at her graduation ceremony, and it scared a lot of folks. It's just not responsible gun use, and so I would support banning concealed carry on our campuses. That's one of the first things that Regents can do, that the legislators gave us the authority to do, and so we should act on it now. That's one thing. I would create a health insurance plan on our CU Denver campus, because our students should be insured. We can't let our students walk around on our campus where there are buses everywhere and there are calls all over downtown Denver. And also, especially during COVID-19 too, we need to insure our students to make sure they're safe on our campuses and they are protected. Other things I mentioned is, we need to place a tuition cap. This is so that students know what they're getting themselves into. I think a lot of things with higher education, and I would even argue that across the nation, higher education sometimes can be a big scam where you rope in a bunch of eager 18-year-olds to sign on to tens and thousands of dollars of debt without really knowing it. CU needs to be better about being open to how much their tuition is going to cost them over the next 4 years. And also even looking at like the other costs that are really hidden at CU, like textbooks are crazy. Like something as a very recent student that we done was, it's probably illegal, I probably shouldn't mention on the campaign, but we were like downloading PDFs of textbooks and sending to each other. And that saved like thousands of dollars to students, And a lot of times these textbooks are actually written by the professors and they were forcing us to all buy it. It's just, there's a lot of hidden costs with school that people don't talk about or CU could be better to address. Other things with the Regents, just immediately off the bat is the Regents need to be more in the community. We really do. And I think the Regents, especially in like the athletics community at CU as well, I think the Regents, most of them are pretty nerdy types. I'm very nerdy myself, and we haven't paid much attention to CU athletics. We need to support athletic programs. We need to support our students. We need to prevent them from getting exploited by the NCAA, especially when they can't even reap in the benefits of their own marketing as student athletes. And also, a lot of them not being able to make pro, they are left back with, not the best grades in their school or not the best education that they receive from CU, and I think CU should step in to be better about that. So with that being said, there's a lot of work that the Regents need to do. Whether either of us run or either of us win, I think we're gonna.
One of us will.
One of us will win. Sorry, one of us will win. It's been a long day for Walter and I too. Have you heard us? It's.
Is there no Republicans on?
When I looked up on Tracer, I didn't see a Republican file. You didn't either? Yeah.
Not yet.
But
Not yet.
so. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, and I'm excited to have these conversations with the Regents and push them and to really take opportunity of our modern student experience and our modern times right now to make policies that make CU a better place. So, yeah.
Absolutely. So what are some of the biggest opportunities that we have? Diversity, 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 and diversity. Quite frankly, Colorado and the University of Colorado can only go up when it comes to diversity. I look forward to being able to be a big part of making that happen. Changing and protecting the tenure tracks to be able to, when we talk about diversity, we can't just talk about wanting to see more Black and brown and Asian students on campus without seeing more Black and brown and Asian professors on campus. So that is something, and the recruitment of those professors, and to be able to ensure that we give them a career path that works for them. Ways of expanding how we allow education to happen. So during COVID, what happened? We learned that we can actually do a lot online and through Zoom and through internet, and expanding opportunities for people to learn from home or and different aspects. So to increase online learning opportunities, especially for the University of Colorado system, where we can and when we can, I think is extremely important. I'm also an ongoing speaker at CCD, and I'm really proud to be able to reach a lot of those students at a community college, which is a huge feeder into our 4-year university systems. And so for people to be able to, use CCD or different other campuses so that their education costs are lower, and then being able to matriculate into the CU system is exciting, and I'd like to be able to see more of that happening. And I had written down athletics as well. So here's the thing about athletics, folks. You know, it's not just about football, but it's about Title IX and different things. Angie Piccioni said in a speech that we had with women CEOs a couple of weeks ago that 93% of all female CEOs played college sports. 93%. And it's because that really taught women the ability to compete, to get along, taught them leadership, and a bunch of different things that follow you into the professional world. So we have already started conversations with Daniel Graham, professional football player that played at CU, with Bo Scalif, who was he didn't play at CU, but a professional ball player here in Colorado. We are now having conversations, and Angie Piccioni, who played ball at Stanford. We are now convening this group of athletes, professional athletes, to meet with the current athletes on CU campus. We're doing that already before I am Regent, because a lot of these student athletes have reached out to me, and especially the black and brown ones, and they've said, we feel used. We feel used, we don't feel appreciated, we don't feel like there is a connection to this campus, and by the time we get done with CU, we don't want to have anything to do with it. Daniel Graham won't let his kids currently go to CU. He's like, I'd like to see them go somewhere else. This is not a good thing for us. So already we are bringing together these voices to be able to speak to these student athletes, to be able to make sure that they feel confident and whole on campus. Because quite frankly, and I don't know the exact percentage, but I'm gonna say 85 to 90% of the students of color on CU campus are somehow or another attached to athletics. And we need to ensure that that we don't just use them to be able to make CU feel good while they're playing ball, but that they graduate. So this is important to me, and I also have a brother that played at CU and went on to play professional ball, so it is important to me. We also have NIL coming out, name, image, and likeness, where those students will be able now to make money off of the fact that they are student athletes. So we need to figure out how that is going to work on these campuses as well too. And once again, it's not just football, it's track and everything else that we do, you know, for all of the students that are there. So I think that there are a lot of opportunities on the CU campus that are all the campuses that we can take advantage of that I would really like to be able to bring to this board of directors. I'm excited to do so. Thank you.
And with that, it's time for closing arguments.
Yeah, no closing arguments, just a closing statement. So you don't know, Andrew, we were in law school together. He was a year above me, and he was known as one of the best oral argument students in our classroom. So don't get in debates with him. He's not nice. Yeah, I'd wrap up this today. You know, it's been an honor to run for CU Regent. This is something that not a lot of folks know about. I've been involved in working with the CU Regents ever since I was in college in my freshman year, and I was involved in student government. And I've seen how CU Regents have played such a big role in our university and being on our campuses, but also like passing the policies in our community to better CU. And CU is a big community. We have hundreds of thousands of people involved with the University of Colorado. It's been a special place in my heart, and I'd be honored to be in this position. Something that's been brought up a lot during the campaign is like, you know, he's too young to run, or he's just trying to run for something else. This is the last time I run for office. This is something I've always wanted to do as a regent. Being regent to me has a special place in my heart because my mentor was a CU regent, and he's the one who got me involved in politics and got me involved in public service. It was Michael Kerrigan who nominated me at the CD1 assembly and has endorsed my campaign. He's been a great mentor of mine, and he's really inspired me to take on this role and represent young voices on our campuses, especially for students who right now don't feel like they're being represented by the CU board. Right now, Jack Kroll, he's the youngest regent on the board, but unfortunately he's leaving, and we're going to be lacking that student voice. I was a student in 2021 at CU Law, and I was a student during COVID-19. I knew what it was like to see my students lose their jobs that they were given after law school, or also lose their housing, and I've even housed some of the students in my apartment in Boulder because they just couldn't afford rent with everything going on when they lost their jobs. And I know what it's like to enter a market where it's really scary and people are getting laid off and getting fired. It was a scary time for students. It was also, you know, shifting onto an online education. It was sad to one day get an email from our CU chancellor saying like, hey, this is actually the last time we're going to be on our campus. And I remember saying goodbye to my friends and my classmates at CU Law without knowing when the next time I'd see them. And our graduation was even in person, so I didn't even get to wear the floofy hat with them. You know, it was sad, and you know, I think a lot of CU students need closure. I certainly do, and I hope that, you know, in my time serving on the Board of Regents, I can really represent the student voice there. It's a voice that's been missing for a long time, and I think that's a really unique asset I bring. But, you know, I also share that I have a lot of experience too. I've actually served on the Board of Governors for the American Bar Association as the only law student in the country to do so. I oversaw an $84 million budget, and I actually managed a $4 million budget cut through COVID-19 without ever even laying off a single employee through this organization. And we did that by cutting the president's salary, by cutting the president's office, cutting traveling fees, and we were able to keep and sustain and support our workers there. And that's something I'll bring as experience to the Board of Regents. Other things, you know, just the deep commitment I have to CU, I think, makes me really stand out as a candidate. When I looked at Regent candidates before, especially in the 2016 election, I asked which one of them actually was involved with CU, which one actually done stuff for CU long before they decided to run. And I was very happy and open about supporting Jack Crow as our current regent, because he was a student on our campus. He was a student leader like myself, and he served in these leadership roles and then came on to be on our Board of Regents. And he's actually done a fantastic job, a phenomenal job. And I'm hoping to follow his great footsteps that he's left behind. With that being said, I'd be honored to have your support. I was honored to make the ballot with top line support at the CD1 Assembly, and I hope to gain your support and your vote on June 28th. So thanks so much.
Oof, politics, politics, and more politics. Before cannabis, I was in politics for probably the last 25 years. And in running, my manager over here always wants me to talk a little bit more about my background. And that's a hard thing to do. It's easy to talk to you about policy and everything else, but backgrounds are always hard. Raised by a single parent father. It was just me and my dad. My dad did not go to college. I was also adopted. I did not find out that I was adopted until I was 35 years old. That was a shock, to say the least. But my parents loved me that much that they never wanted anything to ever hurt me, and so they wanted to shield me from that. My mother was, her mom is British and an immigrant. My father is a black 6'4" Texas cowboy, or he was before he passed away. So I didn't know that I was adopted. And I love them so much for giving me this amazing life and giving me roots and wings to be able to move forward with. What my father taught me was never give up, be a warrior, fight for everything you got. The day that I graduated from CU, we sat down and we had a drink together at the Dark Horse. And he said to me, the older you get, the more titles you have, the more money you make, the more that people are going to come at you. And he's like, I'm concerned that you're going to go out into the world with rose-colored glasses on. And I looked at my father and I says, Dad, you're so wrong. Racism is over. It's 1986. We listen to Run DMC and Aerosmith. We got this. You know, we're good. And here we are in 2022, where I am still fighting my grandfather's battles, where racism has become a bigger issue than I thought that it was in 1986, where a woman's right to choose is now no longer potentially an option in numerous states. I'm shocked by all of this. Experience matters. And I have been developing the experience to be on this board now for well over 30 years. I am a trailblazer. I am unapologetically democratic. I am a fighter for everything it is that I have done, and I have been successful at it. And it is because of my parents and because of this amazing opportunity that was given to me to be a graduate of the University of Colorado Boulder. When we look at what it is that I am bringing to this board, being a former military officer, military access. One of the things that we want to see is more military people coming to see you. It's something that I talk about all the time. I grew up in Colorado Springs. I definitely understand what's happening at that campus down there. When we talk about bringing together groups of people, I have been endorsed by most of the board of directors of DPS, including Scott Esserman, Michelle Quantabaum, and Tay Anderson. I have been endorsed by Lisa Escarcega at the State Board of Education, and I have been endorsed by Angie Piccioni, who is the Director of Higher Ed for the state of Colorado and on the governor's cabinet. Those people and I are creating a group to be able to sit down and talk about what are the best ways to ensure that K through 12 have access to our higher education, because it's not something that has been done. I look forward to being a part of that. I look forward to continue to fight in the way that I have for ending the drug war. I look forward to be able to fight in the way that I have in finding ways for women to feel protected and safe in their homes, and being able to run for office. The fact that there are so many death threats out there for women running for office, including Jenna Griswold, who is having quite the time with the different death threats that are happening, that's terrorism, folks. Preventing powerful women from running for office by throwing death threats at them is one of the most disgusting things that we are seeing here in America right now. I'm proud to be one of the women that stands up that says no more. We're not going to put up with that. I am proud of everything that I have ever done here in the state of Colorado, and I am so proud of the background that I have been able to bring forth to be able to run for political office. I was Congressman Jared Polis's first campaign manager. I was on the board, I was on Barack Obama's National Finance Committee. I was on Kamala Harris's National Finance Committee. There is no level of government that I have not worked in and participated in, and begged and pleaded with. It is one of the most important things in my life that I have done has been policy and politics, which has brought me to the end of the drug war and to sitting on the alumni board and the Black Alumni Board at the University of Colorado. I am going to be a powerful regent, no doubt. No doubt at all, and anybody that knows me knows that to be true. I look forward to serving on this board, and I look forward to being a big piece of the University of Colorado moving forward. Thank you all for coming out on this wonderful Saturday, and I hope that you all have an amazing Easter, Ramadan, or Passover, or just enjoying a phenomenal, beautiful Saturday on Denver's beautiful city. So thank you all for coming out today, and I look forward to the next 2 months. Here we go.
Well, wonderful. Thank you so much for both of you for joining us and for everyone here for joining us. Just a couple closing things. Again, if you're willing to make a donation, the back in the Karen's got is collecting the BREs and the BRE envelopes that are back on the back counter back or table back there. If you're able to join us, this afternoon we're gonna just a few blocks away is the Lowry Beer Garden that has all kinds. It's way more than beer. It has beer, other drinks, non-alcoholic food, etc. So for a social gathering, and then our next month. May's meeting will be back in person at the church, and we will be focusing on get out the vote and how we'll be doing voter registration and mobilizing our House district for the upcoming election. So thank you so much for joining us, and thanks to you for both of you for joining us today as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.